Hello, Rochester Public, community, teachers, students, and parents. Welcome to the Equity and Student Achievement Committee meeting, Board of the Whole. Today is February 11th, 2025, and I would like to call this meeting to order. Today, there are no speakers on the speakers list, and so can I get a motion to review and accept the minutes from the December 10th, 2024 Equity and Student Achievement Committee?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Elliott, seconded by Vice President LeBron. Any questions or comments?
LeBron?
Vice President Malloy, my apologies. Vice President Malloy, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, can I get a motion to review and accept the minutes from the January 14th, 2025 Equity and Student Achievement Committee? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Malloy, seconded by Commissioner Elliott. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I would like to also remind the public and the Rochester community that they can access all of the documents and the presentations that will be given today through Board Docs, RCSD. And we will begin shortly by our Chief of Staff, Lashara Evans, who will be presenting the academic plan quarter 2.
Okay, that's better. You can go to the next slide. Good evening, President Simmons, Vice President Malloy, Interim Superintendent Dr. Strickland, fellow commissioners, and listening audience. This evening, I will provide quarter 2 updates regarding the academic plan. As a reminder, this plan is organized into 5 domains and is connected to our long-term goals and outcomes, including the strategic plan. Each domain has a number of recommendations, which is listed on the screen, for a total of 47 recommendations. Next slide. The reporting process remains the same from quarter 1. For each recommendation within a domain, a relevant department will submit evidence for that recommendation. They are then to confirm if the required actions were fully implemented during that quarter. Then the state monitor, superintendent, deputy, and myself will review the plan and adjust as needed. This includes any revisions or retractions from it. I also spend quality time with the state monitor afterwards to make sure that we are giving our best effort in our submission. The report is then submitted to him, Jaime Alisea. The final document is sent to the Commissioner of Education, and the New York State Department of Education and the superintendent conducts a final review. I also want to say thank you to our fiscal monitor, Mark Potter, who also reviews the plan and provides feedback. Next slide. The reporting question for quarter 2, and I want to tell you the dates for quarter 2 are from October 1st to December 31st. Is, has the district fully implemented the actions during that quarter, which is quarter 2? You can answer yes, no, no in progress, which is if the district started and made significant progress. This is also the case if it's a reoccurring recommendation or the due date is not in that quarter. And also partial implementation if the district implemented timely at least 50%, but less than 75%. Next slide. For each domain, I'm going to share areas of appropriate progress and areas of progress. I will speak to a few of those areas. The first domain is turnaround leadership. For this quarter, we had 7 yeses, 1 no in progress, and 1 no partial implementation. This is an improvement from last quarter where we had 5 yeses and no in progress. The areas of appropriate progress the board is fully aware of: the superintendent search, the governance model, which with the assistance from CGCS, sharing boardly data with the Board of Education that happens at our ESA meetings like today, or even reports that are submitted, the monitoring a percentage of students with 5 or more credits by the end of 9th grade, which is also one of the board goals, connected to the board goals. The areas of progress is the East High transition back into the district. Monthly meetings have been scheduled, and members from both East and Rochester City School District. There's a core team that governs the transition, and the other teams that are guiding the work are organized by the tenants of the DITSI. Also, the monitoring of progress of implementation of academic goals. Chiefs meet with principals monthly to review data and including marking period data, Next slide. The next domain is talent management. This quarter, we have 5 yeses, 1 no in progress, and 1 no partial implementation. Leadership Academy for principals, assistant principals, and aspiring leaders. A differentiated leadership development for our associate directors in special education is underway. Professional development on best teaching practice happen monthly at network meetings as well as principals meetings. And for recruitment and retention of non-tenured staff, human capital continues to utilize strategies to recruit and retain staff. This includes the utilization of job fairs. The areas in progress: monthly APPR status completion reports. They are provided to the independent monitor as well as executive cabinet. School chiefs utilize that data to help hold principals accountable and to monitor progress. Next slide, please. Instructional transformation is the next domain. Of course, it is the largest domain because that's what should lead our district instruction. This quarter, we had 11 yeses, 5 no in progress, and 6 no partial implementation. This is an improvement from last quarter as well, where we had 9 yeses and 12 no in progress and 1 no. So I'm just going to speak to some of the highlights for areas of appropriate progress. T&L department continues to update curriculum materials. As it relates to the data-wise implementation, the teaching and learning department continues to update, professional development. Office of Innovation conducted targeted workshops for school leaders on SMART goals, creation, success criteria, and data analysis protocol. CR Part 154 implementation. To support this effort, our CSD provides written notifications and diligently track communication with families. Additionally, a cross-functional team from Bilingual Education and World Language and the Office of Student Equity and Placement audited and refined the registration, identification, and placement process. Staff was also given professional development opportunities to enhance their understanding and implementation of these procedures. The district continues to make progress related to the 4 areas of noncompliance. The high school selection process. The online application for families to participate in the lottery was revised to become more student-friendly. The final revisions were complete before the lottery opened on December 7th, 2024. The school selection application was revised to easily allow families to know what buildings were offering, for example, bilingual program as an example. Summer school planning. The Department of MTSS, which includes the Office of Expanded Learning and then oversees summer programming, has 6 priorities for summer learning. And lastly, the Posting Not Ready data. It is available online with directions for the community and families to access. Next slide. Areas not fully implemented. Extended school year program. This is a recommendation that It's not due, so therefore that's why it's no in progress. It's an ongoing recommendation that calls for by April to communicate with families in their native language about what programs will be offered. January 15th was the first meeting of the Summer School Learning Design Committee. Strategies to reduce chronic absenteeism. The district continues to work on attendance and to implement strategies designed to reduce chronic absenteeism. The attendance liaisons are responsible for keeping a log that outlines strategies used within school. The department also has a comprehensive website for schools offering streamlined access to crucial resources. Theory of action. The receivership problem of practice has been enacted. Each school has 4 commitment areas to focus their lens to bring about student achievement. Corrective action plan, which is known as the CAP. The district continues to make progress on areas of noncompliance. Early literacy and numeracy. The Office of Parent Engagement has been actively leading the collaboration efforts to enhance early literacy and numeracy among Rochester City School District families. In Q2, OPE partnered with the Teaching and Learning Department to design and distribute a parent survey aimed at understanding the specific needs of families and supporting their children learning at home. This feedback provided valuable insights that gave information on development that helped the development of an academic family center workshop series. And lastly, the implementation of community schools. The Executive Director of Family and Community Engagement and the Director of Community Schools developed a draft community schools expansion plan. Now, next slide. Cultural shift is one of our smaller domains with 3 yeses and 1 no in progress. Highlights include, we have our Executive School-Based Planning Steering Committee. We have a team to analyze enrollment and look at subgroup data with a focus on increasing enrollment and bringing students back, especially from charter. The district and school websites provide multilingual access. In areas not fully implemented is that every school having a PTO or a PTA. Next slide. The last domain is system, resources, and structures, which had 3 yeses, 1 no in progress, and 2 no partial implementation. Over a 4-year period, students who were previously placed in out-of-zone schools before zone reconfiguration will phase out, and the remaining students will be placed within the zone with exceptions allowed only by board policy. This quarter, the Office of Special Education focusing on ensuring that data pulled into the consent decree dashboard accurately represents the progress made by the district towards meeting the consent decree metrics. Weekly meetings were held with staff responsible for building the dashboard, and the data from the dashboard was confirmed with hand calculations. Areas that are not fully implemented include unified, innovative, and evidence-based strategies at each grade level span, and professional learning communities implemented using research-based models at every school. That is all. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Evans, for the presentation. I'm going to start off with a couple questions, and this may be for anybody in the administration, but I'm wondering the process of adopting curriculum into the district. And my question is specifically to where usually is the curriculum coming from? Is this usually private businesses who construct this curriculum, or what's the process of curriculum adoption here in the district?
Mrs. Ramos.
So first and foremost, the first thing we do is identify those areas that we are looking for instructional core practices. What is it that we're looking the curriculum to do? So we have a rubric. And then your process in RCSD is then call for an RFP. And an RFP calls for people that are interested in supporting us with this call to say, these are instructional gaps, this is what we need to do, similar to the science of reading, which was a supplement to our My View or Mi Visión ELA curriculum. That was an RFP that said, we're interested in supplementing our curriculum. These are the areas of science and reading that we have to do. And those RFPs come in, and then you have an instructional council that looks, part of that RFP, at that composed of staff and parents, and then they pick out of that rubric, and then it goes to the schools, and we pilot it, and right now we're piloting high school ELA. And we're piloting at different high schools, and then we're gathering all the material. We talk to the students, we talk to people involved, and then we come back and a selection is done. It's a long process. We started the high school ELA process when I got here around October, and we are in the process right now of gathering all the information with piloting. We never want to pick something that is not relevant to the needs of what we need instructionally, but to the alignment of our students. So our students have a great voice in the process.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was going to ask, and I know that it is a big need as far as curriculum for K all the way up, actually pre-K all the way up to
Absolutely.
12th grade. But I do wonder, for the expenses and the money for some of the curriculum that we are spending for, the curriculum that's been created by whatever entity it's been by, how effective will the process be if we allowed the teachers who's teaching our students, and possibly even, and like you said, there's some student voice in the choice, but even student voice in the creation of some of this curriculum that could allow it to be more specific to the needs of Rochester and what's going on. And I mean this, with all respect, but I was in school 2 years ago, and the curriculum that I took sucked, and that's just, and I'm just being as real as I could possibly be.
And
But I
you
say
should
that,
be.
and how do we rethink the way that we are developing these curriculums? I don't know if there's state law that blocks that, but how do we add the people who understand what the students are attuned to in the classroom and the students who understand what they want to see or what engages them to create some of this curriculum?
So, great points, right? So there is something called relevance, and that is one of the core standards. First and foremost, you have to have an approved grade level curriculum. That might be what you consider the boring curriculum. But in the implementation and the adaptation of that curriculum becomes relevance. And there's a process that we use to say, once we are in this curriculum and learning it, biology is a great example. First year, we're forming and storming with that content. We're looking at the pieces that are just not connecting, and we're adjusting, adding, and that's what should be happening every year with curriculum, right? So one of the TNL responsibilities that you should be asking every year is, how are you adapting and adjusting the curriculum so we continue to meet the needs of our students? Because every year that group of students has different needs. We should not get away from rigor, right? You need grade level curriculum. You never supplant grade level curriculum. You have a strategy that's part of that standard, right, that we're going to go to, but the activities are the ones that scaffold us up to be able to get to that. And so you've heard me a lot about priority standards. What keeps a curriculum aligned and in tune to student needs when we're teaching the standards?
Yeah.
So that's our push to say, this is the standard, this is the curriculum, how are you making this curriculum culturally rich and relevant so we hit the standard? And that's been what we've been doing this entire year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then that sounds good to me. I know that the curriculum piece is a very complicated and complex process, but I do believe that we're in a time where we can start looking at the ways that we are currently doing things and how we can possibly make it more relevant to the students today.
Definitely.
Because if the curriculum was perfect, and
Never
the
is.
district wouldn't be at a 50% absenteeism. And so we have to think about how can we possibly find ways to engage our students to the current place that they're in. And we
So
can do better
agreed.
on that. And so I'm just proposing
So
ideas on
agreed.
how we get that
And so
done.
I think many times, we talk about curriculum, but delivery of instruction is huge, huge. I mean, think about those teachers that engaged you. They were using the same curriculum that you talked about, right? I mean, those are the people that we remember because they made it relevant and that they still made it rigorous. So yeah, I think those are the continuous questions that we welcome and that we ask you to continue to ask so that you do know the work the directors are doing, which means we want them in schools, in those classrooms, feeling and aching the pain that's going on.
Thank you. I'm going to go down the line. I'm going to start with Vice President Malloy.
No questions at this time. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just looking forward to see how these strategies actually translate to data numbers on the progress towards our academic goals. Thank you.
Thank you. President Simmons.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Santiago. I love the conversation around curriculum. I remember a time when there was a bunch of competing curriculums, and so that becomes an equity issue as well. And that sounds like a pedagogy piece is what we want to lean into, to what Ms. Ramos was stating. To be more specific around my question is, I would lean into slide 5. And you may not have an answer right now, Chief Evans, and that's okay. I noticed that we were talking about, let me go to it, the transition of East areas in progress, and we know that progress, is incremental at times. And it sounds from what I've heard that the transition at East has been going good. When I hear the reports, there's a lot of synergy and careful curation of how that's going to go. I'm wondering, how does that look when the recommendations come before us? When do we, as a board, can you answer that, Superintendent? Sure. Around when we start to actually adopt the recommendations that have come before us?
Sure. So just for full transparency, the only recommendations that you are actually going to be seeing would be memorandums of understanding that may happen between the staff and the district, or the collective bargaining units and the district. Other than that, most of those are inputs, and those are decisions that myself and Superintendent Blocker would be making.
Okay.
She did talk to me just to get clarification, and I've explained that we've made a number of decisions already, and those are what are actually under my purview and her purview for now as superintendents.
So those recommendations
also add
equal
that-
decisions?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Can I also add, I think the connection between Superintendent Blocker and Dr. Strickland, because they talk all the time and she is part of our executive cabinet, it's like she's already being transitioned with us and keeping and being abreast as well because of the relationship that they have with each other, because they talk all the time. We discuss things as a district already, not East versus RCSD.
No, thank you very much. And the clarity, I think, was in the recommendations, because the recommendations equal the decisions that are within the inputs of the superintendent's purview. So that gives me perfect clarity. Thank you for that. And then my second question was for slide 8. And that was around, again, areas not fully implemented. And just wondering, again, at a very high level, if there are themes or barriers, process or systems barriers that you all have identified that are impeding on progress in these areas. Not that they're not progressing, but obviously just,
Is it related to all of them or anyone in
Yeah,
particular?
just any of them,
President?
like a very high level, like, hey, these are some processes that are impeding on progress. So like early literacy, I'm going to lean into that one or what have you, but it could also be implementation of the community schools model, but just some high level ideas of what's impeding on those.
Sure. So this is an example, not necessarily that something is impeding on them, but it takes time to actually accomplish them. So for instance, a few months ago, you've already received a preliminary presentation on extended school year. Strategies to reduce chronic absenteeism would be something that I would say we have to ramp up. How are we getting the community involved? How are we getting the stakeholders involved? And actually pinpointing strategies that will be geared towards reducing the chronic absenteeism. I actually do have something that I want to put forth in the near future to actually engage the community. As for theory of action, currently in the district's budget presentations, one of the things that I required is that each department provided an if-then statement that supports the work that they are supposed to do. Corrective action plan, again, those things won't be accomplished because they're just ongoing processes. And I mean, honestly, I could speak to each of these and yep.
And I also want to add about strategies to reduce chronic absenteeism. This is an ongoing conversation we have at Cabinet. We actually look at the data, we compare it from like just taking out half days. What happens when we don't have half days? What does our attendance look like? Is it trending that when a holiday is on a certain day and we don't have school Friday, does that affect? We're having those conversations weekly at Cabinet as it relates to absenteeism.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Elliott?
Thank you. Just one question I have. How do we communicate to the community the definition of chronic absenteeism? Because I think people would think that it's even more than 20 days, but that it is, probably they're out of school for 2 or 3 months. Is there a way in which we can that the community and the definition of what chronic absenteeism is the same, that we can communicate that, and the reasons why we are having, according to the state's definition, chronic absenteeism is because of things that go on in the home.
Deputy?
So,
answer that?
no,
You got it.
that's a great question. So I know that in previous presentations that I've done to the board, we've announced what the definition of chronic absenteeism is. And we've also done a better job explaining what bands students may fall in based off of the number of days that the students are out. And I know that has been an improvement from last year. The portion where I believe we need to do more work, and we will do more work, is around the root causes of why students are not coming and starting to categorize what those different factors are. We know unhoused students are on the rise. We know students have medical conditions that, keep them from being in school. But I do know that the state has heard us and are making waves and trying to figure out a different type of formula, because the way we do business now after COVID is so much different than how we did it before. And all we do is just continuously update them. Our schools have MTSS problem-solving teams. Problem-solving teams are, the attendance portion is a part of the problem-solving team. And again, it's just about putting the information out there. But again, the next step is engaging community, finding the root causes, engaging the community to help support those root causes.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that we inform stakeholders about it as well, because I remember we had a politician from one of the other municipalities that was being critical of us not understanding the definition of what chronic absenteeism is, and the fact that we've got families that, take their kids to the doctors, or, they've got to go to work, so they've got to have a child left at home to care for the children. Those kinds of extenuating circumstances that cause, according to the state's definition, chronic absenteeism. So, thank you.
Great point.
I have no questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. Two, actually, I'm not going to repeat because President Simmons addressed those about the absenteeism and the barriers. About the curriculum, in reference to the curriculum, and I don't know if it's more so a question or, well, it's a question, and it's in reference to the split-level classes. Are we doing that? Do we have schools that have split-level classes, like 4th and 5th? And how would that how can you address the curriculum with split-level classes? And should we be doing the split-level classes in the district? Can you answer that for me, please?
I can. With certain specialized programming and special education, they can group children based on these pieces of need, and you might come across classes with split level, but remember how we talked about teaching the standard? It's having that teacher understand what is it that we need to teach to, and then picking the curriculum that best aligns to that with that grade level. So is it difficult? Absolutely, right? Because you have it, but because when you're teaching to standard, they're kind of all doing the same work. They just might be using two different mediums to get to that work.
That concerns me because kids learn differently. And I know it has to be challenging too for the teachers. Why is it that we're doing that?
Well, it's really based on their individual education plan. So sometimes in special education, it's not about the grade level. It kind of works sometimes as a no grade level, but what are their needs? And they try to group the children based on needs. It doesn't mean that they're not exposed to grade level material because they have to be. But remember, in these classes, you also have extra staff. And you see a lot, when we visit, we see a lot of individual groupings. We see students with flexible grouping, and they are today learning how to understand the main theme based on the author's purpose, right? What is this author trying to say, and what is the main theme? The group of fourth graders might be working off of this material that's fourth grade, and the group of fifth graders are working off this material that's fifth grade, but guess what? They're working to the same standard of understanding author's purpose. So maybe that better understands. So, and then when they go to their groups, they'll work with an adult on the fourth grade content level, and then they'll work with the other adult on the fifth grade content level. So you see a lot of explanation to the entire group about the standard that we're trying to get to, and then you'll see them break off with their grade level materials.
If, going back to what you said about there's several teachers in the classroom, so if we have several teachers in a classroom, why not just give them a separate class?
Well, several supports. So you might have one teacher with a teacher's aide, or you might have one teacher with a paraprofessional, but there's one teacher in that class.
Okay.
Okay?
Another question is,
And I'm more than sure Chief Swan could do a much better job at this, so please forgive me if I've not been very clear.
no, it's fine. It just concerns me. And actually, who makes that decision? Do the principals make the decision of the split level classes, or is it something that is recommended? Who actually decides what schools and what have the split level classes?
So we're going to go back again. The kids are grouped by need.
Need? Okay.
So we've got to remember, sometimes, you can have a kid that's reading at the sixth grade level, and there's a kid at fourth grade that's reading at the sixth grade level. We're always thinking of deficiencies. Sometimes we're grouping based on strengths of the students so that they're not delayed. And then one student might be at a fifth grade level with mathematics, or another one needs curriculum of fourth grade. So it's not necessarily always about deficiency. Sometimes you look at these groupings also about being able to accelerate those kids.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think the last question for Chief Evans, who is part of the steering committee?
Which steering committee are you referring to? The executive school-based steering committee?
Yes.
The unions are involved, myself, the superintendent, the deputy. Who else is on the school-based? Office of Parent Engagement, our parent group leaders. There's a good number of lists. I just didn't have it off the top of my head. So that's who's part of the executive school-based steering committees.
No community engagement outside of?
No, because it's to work on it's to support our school-based planning teams. So to provide professional development if it's needed to help strengthen our school-based planning teams.
Okay. And do we have like a layout of what steps you guys are taking to address that area in the steering committee?
Yes. So we have every month, and Deputy Turner can actually speak to this better than I can, but every month the schools, parent liaisons have to submit a report of parent groups, school-based planning teams. I call it the Rainbow Report. They call it the Christmas Tree Report. And then we work as a team to discuss ways that we can support schools to make sure they have all stakeholder voices at the schools for school-based planning team.
Okay, Commissioner LeBron, no questions. To our parent rep, Monica Graham, do you have any questions?
I just want to say thank you, Chief Evans.
You're welcome.
My apologies.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Apologies for my tardiness. So what I saw from the presentation, no questions. You all have made great points. So thank you so much for the presentation.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Final question, Chief Evans. The PTO, I saw that that's something that's not currently implemented yet, and it will be soon. I'm just wondering where
No,
you guys are.
it's an area of progress. So some
Okay.
schools may have a robust parent-teacher organization, and some
Okay.
schools are still in progress of trying to get,
Okay.
more representation from parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Evans, and thank
Thank
you for
you.
your report. Thank you guys for the work that you do. Next up, we're going to have our elementary network updates, which will include attendance, suspensions, and instructional priorities presented by School Chiefs Rhonda Morian and Brenda Torres Santana.
Good evening, President Simmons, Vice President Malloy, Commissioner Santiago, Commissioner Elliott, Commissioner Griffin, Commissioner LeBron, Commissioner Patterson, Superintendent Strickland, State Monitor Aliasas, and esteemed colleagues. Myself, and as was clearly stated, Chief Morian will be presenting this evening. So our vision for excellence includes instruction, which you will see examples of today with the learning intentions and success criteria. We make sure that we're following our vision for excellent instruction and everything that we do on a daily basis within the district. With our instructional excellence, preparing students for life, we ground all of our work on the strategic plan 1A, 1B, 1C, which heavily focuses on instruction. As you can see, we start with the student. We have the educator and the content with the task in the middle, making sure that our core refers to the dynamic relationship that has to happen in the classroom between the students, the educator, and the content that is being learned, and the assessment that must be there to make sure that the students' learning intentions and success criteria are visible. And this is Network 2, as we will be hearing from Network 2 and Network 3 today. These are the schools within Network 2. As you can see, they are listed there. Looking at our attendance, this year for Network 2, last year, as you can see, and the blue highlighted, it says 23-24 network, average daily attendance was at 80%. This year, we are at 83%. We know that we talk about the chronic absenteeism and what we're doing about it. There's a lot of factors that play into that. So at our schools, all of them have the attendance team that meets regularly to make sure that they're listening to concerns that are happening within their families and trying to attend to them. There's also school-wide celebrations that take place to ensure that the kids are celebrated so that they can see that being in school is important. And the schools are using the tier approach. So you have your tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, which is reflective also in how we look at our students academically. Tier 1 are those students that are always there. So we're making sure that we're giving them shout outs and giving them the awards that they need because they are doing a good job in being there, and we want them to be represented as well. We don't only want to focus on tier 2 and tier 3 when there's interventions that need to be in place, but we also want to celebrate those students that show up every day. So we also engage the parents in conversations through the attendance meeting to find out what are those crucial things and those areas that they are in need of or need support in to make sure that their students are showing up. So one of the things that we're working on is writing within all of our schools. So we're doing our cultural learning walks, making sure that our learning environments are positive spaces, making sure that there's equity, that the parent and the community are involved in all of our communication. The walks are intentional. We want to make sure that we're observing the work that the students are doing in the classroom, how the teachers are teaching. So school focuses on our priority standards, R2 and R3. Principals' learning walks, when we do our network meetings, are looking intentionally to see what is happening within the writing pieces in our schools. One way to do this is always to look for the bright spots, what's happening well. Other things might be you're developing some wondering so that you can have conversations afterwards to make sure that, number one, that we're doing what we asked them to do. So one of the things that we want to make sure that all schools are doing is using rubrics to score the students' work, providing a success criteria that they need to work on, and then doing building-wide celebrations to show the work that's happening in the buildings. Here you can see our suspension data, and we all know that we're supposed to reduce by 10%. We really don't want to suspend. We would need to have the students in front of an instructor so that they can learn and walk away with the learning success criteria within every day. That's why they need to be in front of the teacher every day. So if you look at this chart, you can clearly see from 23 to 24, the numbers there of suspensions, and we're looking for a 10% decrease. And so right now, we have our schools listed, and so where we might have been at 1,108 last year, right now we are currently at 266. So we're working on making sure that schools are constantly looking at this, constantly having dialogue and conversation, and making sure that this information is also shared with parents and getting ideas of what it is exactly that is needed to stop the trend of being absent and coming into school.
Good evening. So you'll see a lot of similar themes with Network 3, and just taking a second to celebrate the leaders of Network 3 and the hard work that they do every day. Like Chief Santana Torres, we've seen an improvement in attendance, just slightly under a percentage point in our average daily attendance, and our chronics continue to be an opportunity of growth at 48.7%. You already discussed the many things schools are doing to improve attendance. It's just something that we're going to be relentless as we work on it. Suspension data for us, we were at 658 suspensions at the end of last year. Currently, we're resting at 167. Our goal was a 10% reduction, but you'll see it's significantly more than that in most of our schools. Teachers or principals are doing a great job. We have more seasoned leaders than when we started a few years ago, stronger leadership teams, stronger MTSS plans, and more consistent networks. But we're excited to see that reduction. Of course, we want to get to much less than that even. So improvement strategies, the strategies that Chief Torres Santana and I are working collaboratively on are focusing on priority standards. You've heard Dr. Ramos mention that. Learning intentions to success criteria, and we'll explain a little bit of what that is in an upcoming slide. Making sure that students' work is posted and celebrated in every classroom across both networks, and fine-tuning the quality of our lesson plans to ensure that they're focused on a standard, they're differentiated, and they present the rigor and relevance that Commissioner Santiago was mentioning. So a key focus for us this year is looking at implementation, the implementation science, and what that means is what are the leaders doing to make sure things get executed in their building. We took two small items. One was success criteria and learning intentions, and the other was making sure every single classroom has posted graded student work. And we monitored the implementation for every school on these two items, and the goal by the end of the year is, of course, 100%. Currently, we're sitting at about 61% and 57%. Another focus that continues to be a focus, and it's been a focus for 2 years, is making sure our teachers know how to develop high-quality lesson plans, and in making sure they're standards-based, not just program-based, but standards-based, and differentiated to meet the many needs in the classroom. So here's an example of the data around the implementation. So we identified two things. Does every classroom teacher have learning intentions, which is the standard? And does every kid know how their standard is going to be measured? Right now, we're at 57% implementation. We started this year at 0. The next piece is the success criteria, which really is how do we measure whether or not kids receive the information? And we're coming along in that direction too. This has been a district-wide focus for both elementary and high school. If we do these two things well, you'll see positive impact in student outcomes. So here's some examples of things you'll see when you go visit classrooms. You should see in every classroom these success criteria and learning intentions. When you're talking to teachers and engaging with teachers, please ask them about what these two things are. They should be able to tell you. The other piece that we looked at was making sure every student had writing posted, that writing was happening every single day. It was graded, it was rigorous, and we're at 61% implementation. We visited every classroom in every school to collect this data. And again, if this work is done, student outcomes will be positively impacted. We're hoping when you go into schools, we know when you go into schools, you'll see writing everywhere. Our goal is by the end of the year, you're going to see it in front of every classroom. And that's what we want. We want schools that you walk into and you see academic rigor and a culture of academics. So we're excited to see that when you visit our schools. Right now, so what's next for our networks? First is mid-year evaluations. Right now, we're meeting with every principal to make sure they have an evaluation of their performance. They're presenting up to us their data performance and how they are measuring up to the rubric that we use to evaluate them. We meet with every principal for just over an hour, and we're in the midst of that this week. We're going to go deeper with our learning intentions and success criteria and writing going into next year as it becomes a district goal and focus. And lastly, a small strategy that we're going to start implementing is the Bump It Up boards. And these are just boards that help students understand what they need to do to get to the next level, which is really helpful in those multi-age classrooms or classrooms where kids are performing at different level. Our kids, when kids are clear about their bar, they rise to the bar so much easier. So that's another strategy we're going to work on. Any questions for us?
Thank you, Chiefs. I appreciate the presentation. I do have two questions for you guys. I saw in you guys' presentations, suspensions were down, which is great to see. But I was one of the delegates for our legislation called Solutions, Not Suspensions. And so I'm wondering, from you guys' ends, what are some practices that's being put into these schools as solutions? And in exchange for the suspensions that we've seen through the years, because I'm sure that there's still, some behavior issues that may still be happening in the school. So I'm wondering, what are we doing to give those students the support that they need, and what are the solutions that we're finding in the schools for our kids?
I think that's an interesting question because it goes back to what you were saying earlier. If we have high-quality instruction and engaging cultures, there's going to be less discipline challenges, right? So working on establishing positive cultures and strong instruction, that's been our priority. We do think that impacts suspensions. Other strategies that every school is doing something different around how they're reducing suspensions. Absolutely. Relationships, of course, are it. Relationships with families are huge. Offering alternatives where a student doesn't have to be suspended when there's a discipline challenge. They can use it as a learning opportunity to showcase some of the things that they're doing around the area that they were suspended in.
Restorative practices are in place as well. And we have a lot of our elementary schools where the students are being trained in restorative practices, and they run circles as well.
We were blessed this year to have a counselor put in every building, and social workers in buildings too, and using them as a front line so that when a kid has a challenge in a classroom, they're not sent to an office, they're sent to support providers. That's been a huge lift for us this year as well.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, and I'm just putting this out there, but I'm hoping to see that continued in our budget regarding around the counselors and the social workers in every school, because our schools do need it. And with that being said, I also want to say, when we're speaking about chronic absenteeism and when we're speaking about some of the outcomes of our schools, there are definitely disparities that our children are dealing with outside of school. And I recently visited one of our schools, elementary schools, where there are a lot of disparities in the neighborhood. And so I'm wondering, what are you guys doing? What are principals doing? What is the district doing to continue and to promote community partnerships, community engagement on the individual school level? Not for every school in the district, but the individual school level, with connecting them with the churches that's in their neighborhood, connecting them with the organizations that may be around there. I'm just wondering, what are we doing to do our best to engage our community partners as much as possible, as the issues that our students are dealing with are larger than just what happens in the building?
This is a huge piece of what our attendance teams do. It's the relationships with families. The first, they have to understand what's causing the attendance challenge. And then from that, diagnosing the support that has to be provided to the family. So whether it's doctors or whether it's community agency partnerships, clothing closets, food, any of those pieces, it comes down to relationships. The schools have to know our families and the challenges that they're working through and how we can best support them. And that's where you'll see community join schools and moving forward.
And also, I know you participated with School 33 when they had the mayor come out. The children really love activities like that, and so they know in order to be a part, you have to come to school. And so that's one way that we gain the attendance of the students in the schools.
Thank you. I'm going to go up to our parent rep, Monica Graham. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, first of all, thank you for the presentation. That was amazing. And I'm going to piggyback off what was just said regarding school visits and surprise visits. So I'm part of the Pillars of Hope program, and my school is School 8. And the children love when we come. And we always try to bring a guest with us and do fun things. So that is another incentive, to give them resources and to have them to want to come to school. So I agree wholeheartedly that we should do as much as we can to get the community and the community programs in the school. In regards to the presentation, I absolutely love that you all are celebrating the children that show up. I know we talk a lot about absenteeism and the children that aren't coming, but sometimes our children face insurmountable obstacles, to even step through that door. So to celebrate them and just know that they're doing the work is great. And I love the bump it up boards, clear instruction. This is what we have to do is amazing. And the showing the work on the walls builds the morale for our children and the school climate as well. So thank you so much and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Parent Rep. And can I also just give a shout out to our Parent Rep, who has been on all the preview meetings, have been at every ESA committee meeting that I've been at. Can we give it up for her? Monica, we love you. We thank you. We appreciate you for showing up. Commissioner LeBron, do you have any questions?
Yeah, this is more so a comment. I just want to point out too, I know that it's about knowing our families, but you know, in the last 2 weeks alone, I've dealt with about 11 children from this district, and the schools didn't even know they were homeless, because what I'm finding is that families also don't always want to share their business with the schools. It's not that they may not even feel comfortable. There's shame for them. There's fear that CPS will get called, right? Because there is no safe or stable place for them to go. And I think that these are more complex issues that we can solve, or even through question asking at this level. But I do want to, continue to encourage that the state recognizes that we do have to look at alternatives. But I'll be honest, I don't even know if we're going to have a Department of Education event. Half of these conversations are going to be relevant in another week or two. And I think that's where we're at. And the notion that we're just continuing to have conversations, and I cannot stress the business as usual craziness that's happening right now, because these are not those times. And I can tell you that as a district that has the largest amount of refugee immigrant populations in the entire Monroe County, because there are no programs like RIA in any other schools in Monroe County other than RCSD, we're going to see even more students not coming to school because of fear of ICE. And that's just the reality. And I don't think that no matter what a principal does, right, to get to know a family, we're not going to convince them to come in, because the reality is we have no real protections for those families. So that's all I want to say on record for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Griffin?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions of concern. I know that we have struggling children. How many, in percentage-wise, do you think that teachers offer the marking period recovery for our children?
So,
And would you kindly explain it to some people in the audience that may not know what that is?
Can I very quickly say that this is a presentation for my elementary school chiefs. The recovery is for high school. You, is that true?
correct.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I just want to say, because they may not be able to answer the question that you're asking right now, because they're not over the high schools.
No, that's correct. They're not able to answer that question. This is for the elementary schools focus. Next month, I believe we have on schedule for the secondary individuals to come present, and I'll be sure that your question is answered. You can even get a head start by putting it in the question log, and we'll make sure that you get that information.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I wasn't aware of that. That's really what I wanted to, my concern was. With that being said, though, what things do we have in place for those children? We do have marketplace recovery at the high school level, but what things do we have in place for those children that are struggling to address their needs? Because we know at a certain level, third grade, we start to see the drop. So with that being said, we do have it at that level, so why don't we have a program like that to address the needs of the children that are younger? So, maybe that's something that we need to look into. Do you have any solutions for that?
We do it a little bit differently in elementary, but you're absolutely right. We need something for our kids that are a little further behind. Right now, we have something called MTSS. It's tiered instruction. So we have instruction that all kids get, tier 1, and students who are behind in a standard will get tier 2 or tier 3, where they'd have a double dose of instruction happen during the day. So ours just happens during the day more often than not. They'd have additional providers. We have reading teachers, intervention teachers that work with them to catch them up. We have some after-school program. We have some tutoring that's happening. So it varies school to school, but we do have plans for every single student in every single school to help them get to grade level standard.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, at what point are we addressing that, though? Because my concern is that sometimes we have a lot of kids that fall by the wayside. And I know we have teacher shortages and, things of that nature, but how are we ensuring that we're addressing the children's needs at that prime time, because we can lose a child because they feel like, as the kids raising their hands answering the questions, the other child is sitting there like, I don't know the answer. So we lose kids when they feel that they're less thereof because they don't have the education that their peers have. So how do we know? How are we dealing with that?
So I was going to start by saying that all the schools have data reviews, and the data reviews are quarterly. The principals meet with all the classroom teachers, and they go over the students' data, and then they put them into the tiers, just like we were talking about MTSS, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And then depending on where the student falls, then they decide what is the support they're going to provide to those students at that time.
You're asking a really great question, when you think about, you hear a lot of people talk about standards, and there's this grade level standard every kid needs to get to. It's the obligation of the teacher to understand the steps that they have to take to get the kids to that standard. So they'll set up small groups, or they'll set up interventions to help kids get to that standard who aren't quite at that grade level standard. It's part of what we do at elementary. It's as common as breathing. We do it all the time for every kid.
And my last question just would be based basically on the level of phonics. I'm a big phonics person because, growing up, it was apple, the clapping, the banana, always clapping for phonics, and it really stuck with me. So I don't see a lot of kids doing that. What are we doing to put that back into our schools at that level? Because I think that is important for children to have that phonics. So can you elaborate on that for me, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I call myself the queen of phonics, too. I feel like it's so necessary in our schools, and it was something that has been a challenge for our system for a long time. We've recently purchased CKLA, which is a program that's just focused on phonics. It's being implemented in every one of our elementary classrooms, K1, 2, might even shift to K3, so that we can ensure that when a kid enters school, we figure out where they're falling in that continuum of teaching phonics, and where they fall off, they can get instruction right away. We have diagnostics, assessments, reading teachers dedicated to it. Dr. Papin Harris is leading a strong agenda, phonics agenda right now. I think you'll be very pleased with where we're going.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Patterson,
I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Elliott.
Thank you. So I was at a school, getting back to the reading part, I was at a school on Friday and happy to see a lot of the writings from students on the walls. And at this one particular school, she was showing me where it wasn't that the teacher needs to have some more improvements. So I was also glad to see that there was accountability there as well. So I'm really excited about that happening in the schools. And just to also say that, we're continuing to improve, around attendance, but also to Commissioner LeBron's point, with our current environment, it may be a challenge. And I don't know if there's some way in which we can extrapolate that particular issue and then still look at if we're making improvements on attendance. So thank you very much, Chairperson Santiago.
Thank you. President Simmons?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I'm hoping maybe the state will take a look at how they're doing. I know they're already addressing how they're doing attendance, but maybe there is something they can do for this period in time, a time such as this, as they would say. But I really don't have any questions. I just wanted to lift the presentation this evening. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for showing high expectations through rubrics and student-focused work being displayed, and it's feeding back, it's looping and showing that there is an expectation for our students and their work as well. So I just wanted to say kudos to that. I was interested in the suspensions rates. I can't even say it. So I'll be keeping an eye on that because that's a drastic change. Is that comparison where it was over 1,000 to now 200? Or is it like from the same
now.
period in time? Or?
Yeah, right now. So that was at the end of the year.
Okay.
So we're monitoring those numbers, though, to make sure we don't go nowhere near it.
Okay, right. So we're still trending lower, though, either way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. We know the importance of tracking this type of information, attendance, absenteeism, chronic absenteeism. So it's very, very helpful. And it's also good for us as commissioners to be able to see some of the steps being taken to help improve those student outcomes in our schools. And I guess the only question I really have is the teaching part. This is fantastic. I want to make sure that as commissioners, so that we can learn to discuss the data that's coming in, other than iReady, how can we expect to see maybe that incremental progress using all of this teaching methodology? How will that be presented to us, like, as we go forward in our new governance model, so that we can actually progress monitor whether or not these are effective methodologies? I hope I made sense there.
Yeah, totally. When you think about iReady in my head is a thermometer. It's just a test of the temperature of how our schools are doing, right? Our biggest bang for our buck will come from our formative assessments, which I know Dr. Ramos and her team are looking to are revamping right now as we speak. That will tell us our kids' attainment to a standard. So that's the data. Once those are revamped, that's the best data you're going to get into seeing our progress towards attaining standards.
And is that formative assessment going to be standardized across all of our schools? I know we have so many programs and unique offerings at all of our schools. I'm so sorry to be so specific here.
That's okay. We're going back to what I said when I first started in October. We needed to teach us standards because with standard, you know exactly where you're going. It doesn't matter what vehicle you're using. We know where we're going, right? And it doesn't matter which road you took 490, but we're with the destination. So our common formative assessments are not going to be measuring content like they have in the past. Are going to measure the standard. We've identified those strategies. Those were the priority standards that we've been working on with principals since December. We are in our visits now saying, show me how this looks. The learning intentions, success criteria align perfectly to that. And we have already engaged some of the iReady data to start to show us the stretch goals, because the stretch goals are those that go to standard. So individually, by school, these chiefs are looking at every one of those stretch goals. We're seeing a lot of greens in terms of starting to be able to see the mark. It's probably not as quick as we want, but we know that it's starting to work. The science of reading is working. That's a little differently. We're asking every reading teacher to show impact of how students have grown under their direction, because this is what we expect them to do, is to be able to help that tier 1 classroom teacher move forward. And Kim is doing a great job. Kim Harris-Pappin is doing a great job of looking at that, not in a accusatory type of form, but in a way to say, tell me what you've done, how is this helping our kids, and how can we continue? So I can tell you that we're a tight group now. There's nothing that we do without the other, because we know that we need the chiefs to be able to help us implement, but the directors are also in those schools helping principals and teachers at all times. So it's starting to now kind of look like we're on the path. Let's just hope that that continues to go that way.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to answer that. And I know everything is in kind of the infancy stage, so I know it takes time to implement all of these strategies. I can say that I've never seen something that looks so great before in this district, so I'm really pleased, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results and the impact on our students' learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Elliott?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back, I'm sorry, to the suspension data for Network 2. So if I'm looking correctly at this, the 10% reduction, that goal, let's just look at School 33, for example. So the goal was 274, but as of 2/3, there's only been 8 suspensions. Am I reading that correctly?
You're looking at the suspensions.
Right, Network 2 data,
Okay.
suspension data.
So this is where you
Is
were
that
at the end of the year.
Page 8 is what the superintendent just
Right.
said.
So your question again?
So for example, School 33, where the
Yes.
goal, 10% reduction would be 274.
Correct.
But I'm looking at what, say, for example, grades K2.
Mm-hmm.
So am I understanding that right, that there are only 8 suspensions?
Yes.
But last year we had, or for this particular, am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
And that the goal, though, is 274, so have we drastically reduced the suspensions?
Yes. And
That
remember,
is,
Yes.
let me just stop here and congratulate, let me just start off with Superintendent DeMario, Dr. Strickland, because that is huge. That says that you all have done a tremendous amount of work around suspensions. And I go back to when I started campaigning 20 years ago, and this is high school data, but there were 14,000 suspensions for the middle school, and primarily those were black boys. So I am just so excited that we're having, that at 33 school, we're talking about at this point, at least as of February,
83 total.
yeah, okay, so but that's still amazing. Yeah, but I was just looking at the grade, yeah, and so they're saying, the superintendent is saying 83 total, but that's still absolutely amazing that we have these kinds of reductions. So I just want to give the superintendent and his staff just tremendous congratulations for this work. I know that this board has been talking about this for years, and to see these numbers come down, and to see, and I'm sure that there's been some alternate kinds of opportunities for our kids to be involved in, and not to just have them out of school, because that also impacts attendance as well. So I just want to really, really highlight that, because that's tremendously important. And I don't expect that, I know this, and this is elementary school, so I don't expect, in June or next month that it's going to be anywhere to reaching those, that goal. So again, just congratulations. That's huge work, and I wanted to highlight that and honor you all for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chiefs, for your presentation. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. Thank you, thank you, Interim Superintendent, sorry. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent, to our chiefs, to our principals, to our teachers, and most importantly, to our students. Thank you guys for the work that you all are doing. We do have reports for the board that is currently on board docs. There are 3 reports that are currently on board docs. We have the attendance report, the new course report, and the receivership report. Again, to the public, you can access all of these reports on board docs RCSD, or you can go to the board website for the district and you'll find these reports there. But these are public reports, and also to our board members, these reports are to us. Please don't forget to complete the Commissioner Board Meeting Survey. And lastly, can I get a motion to go into executive
So moved.
session? Moved by Commissioner Elliott, seconded by President Simmons. The board may recess in executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment of specific individuals and/or to discuss matters of concern with the general counsel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. This meeting is now adjourned and going into, not adjourning yet, going into executive session. I'm learning. Thank you. Welcome back to the ESA Committee of the Whole. I'm just going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved?
Is there motion by Vice President Malloy, seconded by President Simmons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? ESA meeting is adjourned.
Am I jumping in right now? Okay, so we're going to actually, my voice is hoarse, go into the special meeting. May I get a motion or entertain a motion to open our special meeting, or do I even need that right now? Give me 1 second here. I'm just trying to log into my computer. Okay, thank you. So we are now, it's Tuesday, February 11th. It is 8:37 p.m. We are entering our special meeting to convene for consideration of resolutions. We do not have speakers at this time. Going into our resolutions for consideration under action items on our board docs, I'd like to look at, well, I'm not even going to bundle these. We'll do them. Contract substitute, entertaining a motion for contract substitute.
Resolution.
Resolution number 505.
So moved?
You record that, clerk, when? Okay. All in favor, or any open for discussion on contract substitute, resolution 505? Any discussion? All in favor of 505?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving forward to acting administrative appointment, resolution 506.
So moved?
Excuse,
So entertaining a motion for resolution 506. Moved by Vice President Malloy, seconded by Commissioner Patterson. Open for discussion.
yes, is that an AP position? I'm just.
It is.
It is. Yes, I don't, I'm just getting back to my desk, from my seat, but, I have, questions on, is that for, what school is that? Is that for East?
General Counsel, is that something we can discuss openly on the dais, or is that the questions being posed for executive session?
Yeah, I think if it's just general where the position is, that's fine. We're not talking about the person.
Yeah, so it's at East Upper.
Okay, I just have a question. Was that particular job posted for East High School? I didn't see that particular AP job posted. And that's my big concern.
Sure. Good evening, Commissioner. East is handled a little bit differently because they have their own superintendent and they have their own process that they go through. But all assistant principal positions are posted in December, and we have open continuous recruitment so that when a position becomes available, a pool of candidates can be moved to the school where stakeholders then consider the candidates. But this is an acting position, and so East had a process where they selected this candidate, and there will be further process later.
Yeah, okay, so you said something that is kind of striking. You said that we have a open, revolving hiring process for APs, but recently you have posted the jobs for certain schools, like for Franklin and 58 and Andrew Langston. So I'm just curious of why would you not pick from that pile of people we already have if we already have a rolling process of people that are in that pool? Why would you put those out there, those particular jobs out there, or post those particular jobs for those schools if that is the case?
Commissioner, we do not post assistant principal positions by school. It's just a continuous open. Principals might be different, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is for the AP and the principal jobs. You initially posted those positions for those jobs. My question to you is, what you said, that we have a pool that we pick from. So why didn't you just pick for the pool that previously for those jobs instead of going through interview process?
I'm going to So superintendent would like to respond to that.
So East is still under the EPO. That's why Superintendent Blocker made her selection. This is an acting position. Acting positions are at the discretion of the superintendent. She probably will likely run a process later in the months, and that's all that there is to say.
Any other discussion around 506, Resolution 506?
I'm denying, I don't,
We haven't taken the vote yet, but are there any further discussion on Resolution 506? Okay. I'm on 506.
Okay.
Okay, with no further discussion, all in favor of Resolution 506? Aye. Any opposed?
nay.
Okay. Moving forward, entertaining a motion for Resolution 507, appointment to the professional educator area.
Motion.
By Commissioner Patterson. Need a second?
Sure.
Seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Open for discussion. Without any discussion, all in favor of Resolution 507?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 507 carries. Entertaining a motion for Resolution 508, a provisional appointment to the listed competitive civil service titles. Motion Commissioner Patterson,
Second.
seconded Commissioner Griffin. Open for discussion. I would like to take a moment to just commend Elizabeth Estevez and congratulate her as being provisionally appointed. Any further discussion items for 508? With no further discussion, all in favor of Resolution 508?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 508 carries. Permanent appointment to the listed classified civil service title, Resolution 509. Entertaining a motion for Resolution 509.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Vice President Malloy, seconded by Commissioner Patterson. 509 is open for discussion. With no discussion, all in favor of Resolution 509?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 509 carries. Looking at Resolution 510, entertaining a motion for Resolution 510.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Elliott,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Resolution 510 is open for discussion.
Madam President, I'd just like to take the opportunity to just acknowledge and congratulate a number of people, all of them, actually, but the folk that I know, Tom Casa, Joe Baldino, and Wakili Moore, just want to say much success to them in their next assignment and what they're doing. Some may be, I would imagine, doing some consulting with all of their expertise. I don't know that for sure. But Tom Case has been here a very long time. He's been here even before my tenure on the board. Also, I believe Wakili Moore, and we were just talking about Joe Baldino. And so just wanted to congratulate them and thank them for their service here in the Rochester City School District, and wish them much success. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Elliott, and I would like to echo those sentiments. I grew up on Roslyn Street, right adjacent to Mr. Moore, and so wonderful to see the work he did and his implementation of new generation of, I'm making up that, what was it called? Leadership Academy for Young Men. That's a different thing. So his work there, and then Joseph Baldino being at Wilson and so many different schools, and familiar names for sure. And so thank you for your expressions. And any further discussion on Resolution 510? With no further discussion, all in favor of Resolution 510?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 510 carries. Resolution 511, entertaining a motion for Resolution 511.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Griffin,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Patterson. Any discussion regarding 511?
Well, in general.
Yes.
I just want to know, maybe this could be in the question log, what's the percentage of employees who resign from the district? So if that can be in the question log, I'd appreciate that.
Captured, thank you. Any other discussion around Resolution 511? With no further discussion, all those in favor of Resolution 511?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 511 carries. Entertaining a motion for Resolution 512.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Patterson, seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Any discussion regarding Resolution 512? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Resolution 512. Were you able to capture that? Okay, Resolution 512 carries. Okay. We're going to move into our budget calendar at this time. Will you be facilitating that, Clerk Nguyen?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Just so you all know, on October 24th, in one of the final finance meetings, you all approved the draft budget calendar at that time. And as usual, we do not have the city dates. They have now been provided and are highlighted. And additionally, I just want to let you all know that this afternoon, after this was posted, we received confirmation from the city on the budget vote date, which will actually be June 17th, and so added to the bottom of this calendar. So again, these are dates just aligning to your budget deliberations, which will occur in August, including your city budget hearing date and your public hearing date. Also, we made a shift to the superintendent's budget presentation. It was originally scheduled to be provided in your finance meeting. As you know, you sunset that committee. So that meeting will now occur in your, that presentation will now occur in your business meeting. So all changes are highlighted there.
Thank you, with the addition of June 17th being added to the calendar.
Correct, ma'am.
All righty, thank you. Any questions from the fellow commissioners around budget calendar?
No.
Thank you for your presentation on that.
I do have one thing to say, Madam
Yes.
President. I do know that we are doing these budget hearings prior to our vote on our budget. But I would also like to say that we don't necessarily have to include whatever city council is asking us to include. I think that we have to make that ultimate decision. They can share it with us, but based on our own board goals and our strategic plan, I think it's important that we recognize that we don't have to, whatever they recommend, that we don't have to include it in our budget, particularly if it doesn't align with our goals and with our strategic plan. So I just want to put that on the table. And if you recall, I don't think they voted in favor of our budget in the last 3 or so budgets. So I don't feel that we need to feel beholden, if you will, to necessarily include what they may recommend into our budget. Just want to put that on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, and we do recognize that as a ceremonious vote, to your point, Commissioner Elliott, for sure. Thank you for that. And so we're going to move into this, we're moving into policy at this time,
Well,
right?
first, we need a motion for the budget calendar, and if you could just add on there the addition of the June 17th.
Got you.
Thank
So
you.
do I put that language in there? So I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the budget calendar for 2025 with the addition of the date of June 17th. For motion by Commissioner Griffin.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Patterson. All in favor for the budget calendar?
Aye.
Any opposed? The budget calendar has been adopted. Okay. And so at this point, I'm going to turn the mic back over again to Clerk Nguyen, who is going to do a presentation for our policies.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, I will be discussing with you all your financial management policies, Part 2 and Part 3. Hold on one moment. As a reminder, the policy process is here and is a robust process that includes both community voice through your advisory groups as well as cabinet. And so I'll just jump right into what is the significant changes for this set of policies. So as you can see here on the chart, I'm sorry, if you could advance it another, yep, one more. Thank you, sir. So this here lists the policies within the financial management section, part 2. As you see in the middle column, we address significant changes. And so we'll start with the non-resident tuition payment policy 6254. BEC made a recommendation on this policy to clarify what the meaning of non-resident was. And so there was clarification to just add that this relates to being a city or non-city resident. There were no significant changes to policies 6256 or 6300. And then as we move into the auditing policies, with the advice and recommendation of the Auditor General, she has revamped and made a recommendation for these policies, starting with 6600. It was reorganized just to simplify the policy. If you all remember that you had conversations around moving to as much plain language as possible, the policy was further aligned with the law and just really outlined the work of the audit committee. Then we have the internal auditor policy, which is being recommended to be rescinded. Any key components of that policy have been included in the 6600 update. Same for claims auditor policy. That policy's language was simplified and reorganized, and it's really aligned to your current practices as it relates to that. And then closing out for part 2 of the policy, of financial management policies, was your independent auditor policy 6625, which is also being recommended to be rescinded. It is found to be redundant with the law, and the key components that were necessary were moved into policy 6600. Any questions on the part 2 policies before I review part 3? Okay.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So, and this is, the Auditor General has looked over all this information, and that's fine with her too, right?
Yeah, she was considered the key expert on those policies as being the auditor, and so most of those recommendations came from her.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. So moving on to financial management policies in part 3. There are just a few there, and so for 6630, there were no significant changes. That's, the financial reports and resolution policy. Your internal reports policy, 6680, is being recommended to be rescinded. This policy existed before you all had board docs, where many of these related documents were, so they were not posted publicly before, and now they are available. And then for your purchase of food, meals, and refreshments, 6835, which is a newer policy, there are no significant updates. There are still, just so you all are aware, policies that are under review from this batch and were pulled because they needed further discussion. That includes your purchasing policy, your responsible bidder policy, contracting for professional services, authorization for contracts, and vendor relations. So those policies will come forward to you at a later date. And then just to review the deliverables related to the policies that were just mentioned. As you all know, you talked about the requirements that you have placed on administration through many of your policies, and so just looking to have a more thorough review of that portion as a part of the policy review process. And so as you see, the non-resident tuition payment deliverable is legally required, and that's why it's highlighted there. It states that the Board of Education will establish tuition rates for non-resident students each year. The administration will advance a resolution setting the non-resident tuition rates as soon as practicable after the administration has been notified of those rates by the New York State Department of Education. Okay. So reporting of grants, policy 6256. The current deliverable associated with that is that for the board to ensure better fiscal oversight, the superintendent to submit a written report to the board on a quarterly basis. And that will include all newly awarded grants. In addition, the superintendent or their designee shall present to the Finance Committee in October for each school year for the purpose of discussing the overall use of grants in the prior year, as well as grants being pursued or utilized in the current year. So you all receive a quarterly report related to grants via email, and then the grants director, executive director, Ms. Pecor, typically comes into your October finance meeting and provides a grants presentation annually. In terms of deliverables for your financial reports and resolutions, policy 6630, All of these deliverables are bundled into your monthly finance report, which you receive as a presentation from your CFO during your business meeting, as we no longer convene the finance committee. So this list of reports here, which was also included in the other discussion related to board reports, includes your cash flow, your monthly available funds report, forecasting, student activities fund, change order reports, grant reporting, contract reports, budget transfer reports, and charter school reporting. This also goes on to state the superintendent shall provide other financial statements as requested by the board. And then the final part of the deliverable states that the Board of Education shall require the chief legal counsel to provide quarterly reports on any contracts for goods or services issued under $35,000. And that will include the vendor, the length of the contract, date it was signed, amount of the contract, a brief description of the services to be provided, and verification that the contract was reviewed by the Department of Law and executed by the superintendent. And you all currently receive that report via email. There is no presentation associated with that. If it's the will of the board, these policies will be forwarded to the business meeting on February 27th for a first reading and continue to follow the policy adoption process as outlined in Policy 2410, with final vote at the April business meeting.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Nguyen. And for the purposes of this particular agenda this evening, I did ask that these policies be moved to special meeting because there were questions around them at the last policy meeting. And with that, Chair, the chairperson, Commissioner Griffin, I'm going to ask that I work through these for the sake of time and in this special meeting.
Absolutely, go ahead.
For consideration. And before I move forward with that, what I would like to be clear on, Clerk Nguyen, is the policies we're looking at tonight are discussion points only, correct?
That is correct, and this is for discussion. If you all agree, you'll move it out to your business meeting where you'll have your readings.
Right, discussion, and once we are done deliberating around a discussion, this can be forwarded to or out of policy meeting into the first reading, where we will be able to kind of dissect the policies as we go, first, second, and third readings before the vote in April.
That is correct, ma'am.
All right. So with that said, so I got to jump in on these real quick. We got to read these. Lord.
So I just gave you all a summary
You
of
did.
what each of those policies was in the track change in board docs. The full track change documents along with that presentation and a clean copy is available, so.
And so when we go into the first readings, we can get a little more granular in the actual any questions or what have you, or would that be amenable for this evening? Or, because we just.
So, ideally, if you all have points now that you'd like to discuss and have them updated or included in your first reading so that the policy is as complete as possible as it goes through the process, that's ideal. However, at each reading, you have the opportunity to make changes, have further discussion, and make decisions at that point.
Okay, so I'm going to probably open up for a little bit of discussion to see if we can work through maybe some questions, very brief questions. Before I do that, I see Vice President Malloy's hand.
When is the first reading then scheduled? Or when would that be? What meeting?
Yep, if you forward it out tonight, it would be the February 27th board business meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Each reading takes place at a business meeting until the April.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so with that said, let's jump into policy 6254. Why is it not coming up for me? There we go. Okay, so any discussion around 6254? We just bringing it out? Help me out.
You're making a motion to forward it out and then
Forward it
starting
out.
the discussion?
Then we can, okay.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, thank you, Counselor. I'd like to entertain a motion to forward policy 6254 out of policy committee.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Griffin,
Second.
seconded by Vice President Malloy. Open for discussion on policy 6254, excuse me.
Discussion.
Yes, Commissioner Patterson?
Just a question, and it might be for council. The definition of a non-resident student, would you clarify that for me, please?
Excuse me, Commissioner, I believe that language was added to the policy that says non-resident is defined as a student who resides outside the city of Rochester. I mean, a non-resident student is really someone who doesn't reside necessarily in the boundaries of the school district's normal boundaries.
Do we have those students that are in the district from outside the city?
Commissioner, I couldn't confirm or deny that, but that data might be available elsewhere, but I couldn't tell you tonight whether that definitively exists at this time.
Superintendent or president?
I don't have that information, but we can put it in the question log. Clerk Nguyen, I don't know if you were able to capture Commissioner Patterson's question. Oh, I'm sorry, Superintendent.
Yes, we do have non-resident students, and in particular, where this actually bumps up is our summer school program. A lot of our suburban counterparts don't offer summer school, so they choose to do it in Rochester.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, out of curiosity, what is the tuition for, what's the going rate? Like, how is that determined?
That'll have to go in a question log. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, typically there's a rate that comes from the state, and that is adopted, and the board actually votes on that at a certain point in the school year.
Thank you. So, all in favor of policy, or moving policy 6254 out of policy committee?
Second.
Any opposed? Policy 6254 is being forwarded out of policy committee at this time. I'd like to entertain a motion to forward policy 6256 out of policy committee. Motion by Commissioner Patterson,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Policy 6256 is open for discussion. Any discussion on 6256? Seeing as there is no discussion, all in favor of forwarding policy 6256 out of policy committee?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy 6256 is now forwarded out of policy committee. Entertaining a motion to forward policy 6300 out of policy committee.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Patterson, seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Policy 6300 is open for discussion. Seeing there's no discussion, all in favor of forwarding policy 6300 out of policy committee?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Entertaining a motion for policy 6600 out of policy committee.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Patterson,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Policy 6600 is open for discussion.
I just have a question. What is the reasoning for the changes of the verbiage in 6600? There's a lot of information that has been crossed out. Can somebody explain why is it that we have so much information that's being removed from this policy? And it was just amended on the 23rd. It was done back on December 23rd, 2021. Why is it that we're changing the verbiage? Can someone explain to me? Does anybody know why?
I can just speak to this if you don't mind briefly. Some of the lines you're saying is not deletions, but reorganization. Sometimes it's easier to look at the clean copy of the document, but again, it was to simplify policies as well as to align it with updates to the law.
Okay, so these particular changes on here, though, were not governed by or mandated by anyone but the administration, is that correct? On the verbiage here?
These recommendations came from your general auditor.
Okay. So she's not here to give more general information, so I guess we would have to refer to her for the other questions that I have in reference to it. If she was the one that initially made these changes, because I do have direct questions, but you're probably not going to be able to answer it. So I'll definitely send the questions into the board log so she can address them for me.
Yeah, you can put it in, you can send it to me and I'll ensure that they're forwarded to
Okay,
her.
thank you.
And just to add a process a point, typically, again, policies are referred to, again, you hear the term subject matter experts within the district. So if there's a policy that particularly affects a particular department, for example, if there was a teaching and learning-based policy, it would not be before the board unless, the teaching and learning department got an opportunity to review that and provide input. If you have a policy specific to audit committee, the work of the committee, that would not be before the board, typically unless the auditor and her department had a chance to review and provide input. So you're usually seeing the collective input of the departments that are particularly affected, or departments that do the work, when these come to you with the recommended changes.
Thank you. I guess my concern is that when we have changes that are not actually mandated by the state or it didn't come in through NISBA, it's the difference between the two. When you're making so many changes, I just think that we might miss something. So, and that's my concern. And because, I am learning more about the different policies, sometimes I get kind of skeptic of what changes are made and why they're being made. So that's why I'm asking questions. But thank you for your information. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Griffin. And for my clarity, I saw your hand, Commissioner Patterson. For clarity, again, we're voting to move these out of policy committee, but when we go into readings, if there are suggestions or language that we might want to see, that would be the time for those discussion points, correct?
Ma'am, and any questions, could be forwarded now so that they be prepared and ready
In
for you all at
preparation for it,
reading.
yeah, absolutely. So is there any language that well, we'll keep going. Commissioner Patterson?
Yeah, just language again, and just for clarification purposes, in line 2, it says appoint the Auditor General to oversee the work of the board's Office of Auditor General. Could you explain that to me? I really have no, I know Anissa to be the Auditor General, but is there something that I'm missing there?
I don't want to speak for the Auditor General, but I will offer like a brief opinion. I think you could definitely put on a question log, and she can offer additional information. I think
That's fine.
The office was established, right, by the board, and this is the board's employee. The board has her as an employee, so I think that's why she probably suggested the change and wrote it that way. But I would put it on a question log, and she could answer directly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And for this particular policy, there's something that stood out to me that I actually liked, and that was around a change in language I feel like I picked up on, and that was from annual financial records versus annual financial report, because annual financial report is much broader an aerial view, whereas the annual financial records, my interpretation of that would be that we're getting a little more concise and granular around the information. And so that was interesting to me. I'll reserve any other comments or questions for the future because, well, I'll ask it now so that we are fair. It's on the second page, and it's like the strikeout of the employees of the district being prohibited from serving on this particular committee is, I do have a question around that. So I just want to raise that. We could probably put it on a hanger, but there might be some clarity that I want to know about that as we move forward. Is that fair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other discussion points for policy 6600?
I do have one more thing to say. Going forward with these, it would be probably appreciative for us to have an expert here with us to answer these questions in lieu of if Anissa can't be here, because that's what we should have as a board, because we need questions answered, and that's the best way for us to get them answered if an expert is present, in my opinion.
I could just add that Anissa was not asked to be here tonight because you all's process does not generally include the subject matter expert to come to the meeting. So if you all asking for that to happen for Anissa, I can make that request and work with her to find a meeting that can occur in. I'm also not clear if you're asking for the entire process to be shifted to always have a subject matter expert, because that would be a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, for us to know exactly what the lingo is and what it should be and to understand the dynamics of the change, I think for all of us, it would be great for us to have an expert present when we're discussing these policies because, we don't know everything, but they do. So for me, personally, it would help to know that the information being conveyed is by an expert.
Okay, I definitely respect opinion, although I may have a difference of, and recognize that these policies do come before us for quite some time, even extension into a special meeting with a lot of opportunity to even connect with, place things in the question log. So I would encourage us to make sure we're leaning into those opportunities as well. But your points are taken, received. That is my opinion. And so at this point, I would like to entertain a motion to for policy 6600 to move forward out of the policy committee.
You have a motion, you just need a vote.
Thank God. All right, all in favor of policy 6600? I lost my flow.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Entertaining a motion to forward policy 6610 out of policy committee.
Motion.
Motion.
A motion by Commissioner Patterson.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Policy 6610, open for discussion. No discussion around policy 6610. I do want to say that I approve, or well, not approve, but understood the recommendations being sent by 6610. I do like to lean into language because one thing I saw is that it might give the how-to. Although it is something that's absorbed within state law, having that how-to breakdown might be relevant. So that is something I would like to explore as we continue to discuss this policy, maybe in the readings. But at this point, I did not hear any discussion for policy 6610. So all in favor of policy 6610? Nobody's in favor?
Aye.
Oh, all in favor of moving, let me finish, thank you. All in favor of moving policy 6610, forwarding out of the policy committee?
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy 6610 is being forwarded out of the policy committee. Entertaining a motion for policy 6625.
Motion. Second.
Motion Commissioner Patterson, second Commissioner Griffin. Any discussion around 6625?
Yeah, can you explain why we're rescinding 6625? Where is it going? What's happening with this particular policy?
So the key components of that policy that were relevant were included into 6600.
Okay, it refers to other laws and everything with this. See, my concern is that when you're dealing with policies, there's a lot of different lingo that goes with it, and there's a lot of different references. So if we don't know what applies to what, I think it's still for the public. This is not so much for us, it's for the public as well, and the community stakeholders to understand what we're looking at. They don't see this before we do. So that's why I say an expert should be here for different questions and to explain to our listening public. And that's a big concern for me. So we're rescinding it because it's part of policy 6,000, you said?
So Commissioner, if I can just offer kind of like a brief insight. So I think in the presentation, the overview presentation that Clerk Wynn did, it stated that the Auditor Generals were recommending rescission of policies because they're now incorporated into policy 6600. This policy talks about the external auditor, right, and retention of an external auditor. Policy 6600 does have an entire section on the external auditor. So again, the board can obviously look at both policies and make a determination whether you think that 6600 sufficiently captures what was in 6625. I think the Auditor General's point is to have less policies and have more of the relevant information combined into one policy in one place. So I think the commissioners can absolutely take a look and determine, okay, do I see enough transferred into this to be comfortable with it? And if you don't, the board has an opportunity through the readings to offer input on that.
Helpful. I appreciate that direction, General Counsel, because again, to my point made on the previous policy just now, so if we see language that talks more to the how-to and things that we don't want to see lost, we can suggest that during the readings and move it forward. So we'll note that, and if we have those suggestions, Clerk Nguyen, is that something we can do in between, send those, or wait until the first reading probably, is that?
Commissioners are welcome and encouraged to send any corrections, updates, feedback prior to, so that those can be included for the discussion. So perhaps not waiting until the next reading would be advantageous.
Okay.
Absolutely, that gives an opportunity to have pertinent answers and relevant answers to the questions, because it's not always able to anticipate every single question that might come up.
Well, I did submit answered questions, but they never were answered. So
Okay.
that's part of it too. So some of the questions I'm asking never were answered, and they were done in January 31st, for the record.
Thank you for that, and we'll double check on some things. And so I'm gonna ask that we all in favor, am I doing it right? Of forwarding policy 6625 out of the policy committee?
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy 6625 is now being forwarded out of the policy committee. Moving to policy 6680, forwarding, entertaining a motion to forward policy 6680 out of policy committee.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Patterson, seconded by Commissioner Griffin. 6680 is now open for discussion.
I'm not going to be redundant.
Seeing as there's no discussion regarding policy 6680, all in favor of policy 6680? Any opposed? Policy 6680 carries out of the policy committee. Motion to entertaining a motion to forward policy 6620 out of the policy committee.
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Patterson. Open for discussion. Seeing as there's no discussion, all in favor of moving 6620 out of policy committee?
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy 6620 carries out of policy committee. Entertaining a motion to forward policy 6630 out of the policy committee.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Griffin.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Patterson. Policy 6630 is open for discussion. Seeing as there's no discussion for policy 6630, all in favor of policy 6630?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Policy 6630 is now being forwarded out of the policy committee. Entertaining a motion to forward policy 6835 out of the policy committee.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Patterson, seconded by Commissioner Griffin. Policy 6835, open for discussion. Seeing as there's no discussion, policies, all in favor of policy 6835?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy 6835 is now being carried out of or forwarded out of the policy committee. We don't have any executive sessions, do we? The language is there as a courtesy. Well, thank God for that. We have now, I'd like to entertain a motion to end or exit the policy committee of the whole for this evening.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Griffin.
Special meeting, ma'am.
We do have another one?
No, this is the special meeting. You said policy.
Oh, the policy, oh, forgive me, public, I'm confusing you. This is the special meeting, so let me restate that. Entertaining a motion to exit the special meeting this evening.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Griffin.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Patterson. All in favor of exiting our special meeting?
Motion.
Aye.
Aye, I'm sorry.
Any opposed? Good night.
Good night.